Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown, and this is our informational meeting about the Caregiving Listener Project. I'm thrilled for those who could join us live and send my gratitude to those who are watching the archive. I'm going to go through the logistics of the project, how it works, and how you can get involved. And then I'll open it up for questions for anyone who's joining us live. Okay, so here we go. Everybody ready? So I just wanted to quickly tell you a little bit about myself. So I started supporting family caregivers in 1990 and launched one of the very first online caregiving communities, which I managed and oversaw for about 24 years. And I also was in a personal caregiving situation. I started helping my dad in 2004 and cared for him until he died this past July, in July of 2023. And I started caring for my mom in 2015, and she died in August of 2022. And I had a brother who died suddenly in August of 2021. And actually, my brother's death is what really started me to think about listening and how important it is to have someone in our life who simply listens. How important it is to know where to go to find a good listener. I think we all, during our caregiving experience, have tested out friends who we thought could listen, but then couldn't. And it could be that it was just too overwhelming for them, so they didn't know what to say, or they just felt powerless in the experience and didn't know how to support us. So after my brother died, I started thinking about how do we create good listeners within our community that are accessible for us, that we know are good listeners. And that's what really started my training around listening. So I developed a two-part course called The Art of Listening, and individuals who graduate from that course become listening artists. And that's how we know that someone's a good listener, because they are a listening artist. In addition, I lead different training programs to help current and former family caregivers transform their lived experience into coaching family caregivers, leading support groups, becoming a virtual assistant for family caregivers. And in those programs, especially our coaching training program participants tell a 4-minute story of their choice. And honest to goodness, once we started doing this, it was amazing to see what happened after someone shared a really personal and difficult story and then received support through conversation about that story. I remember in particular, one training program participant shared a story about really not feeling like she had done enough in caring for her parent. And I think we can all relate to that regret of feeling like, should I have done more? She told the story, and then she engaged in a conversation with us about the story. We didn't tell her how to feel. We didn't tell her what to do. We didn't give her directives or instructions or should on her. We simply engaged in a conversation by asking more questions. And at the end of the conversation about the story that she told, honest to goodness, it was like a veil lifted that had been in front of her face. She was free. I've been lucky enough in our project to tell 2 stories. And honest to goodness, I don't remember what those stories are because I released them. One I held on to for years, and Joan actually was the listening artist who helped me release it. I remember who the listening artist was. I don't remember the story. So I thought, we've got something here that's pretty powerful. How do we bring it to the masses? How do we make it more accessible? So in 2023, we hosted a Caregiving Listener Project twice, and it was great because it gave us insights and helpful feedback about how to improve the project going forward. So we're going to do it again at least twice in 2024. We picked 2 dates that we think are particularly timely: February 16th, which is National Caregivers Day, and October 10th, which is World Mental Health Awareness Day. So let's talk about how you can be involved if you'd like to be a listener. So here's what's required. You complete the Art of Listening course at no charge. You watch an archived class that I lead, and then you join Joan and I for an hour live class. We practice the listening skills, and then we talk about the logistics of the event. So you are prepared as a volunteer listening artist to show up and be ready to receive 2 stories. So you decide when you'd like to join us on February 16th. We've got times that we're going to host the event, and I just want to say that we are testing times, so we'll see which times get the most storytellers to sign up for. But this is where we're starting with the times, that we would start at 10 a.m. and end at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and then start again at 7 p.m. Eastern time. You only have to join us as a listening artist for 1 hour. During that 1 hour, you would receive 2 stories. You would connect in a private Zoom room with 2 storytellers. We offer the opportunity to record the story to the storyteller. We can record it for their own private use, or we can record it and make it public. It's up to the storyteller. It is not required. The goal of this project is to connect someone who has something that weighs on them, a story that they can't quite heal from or reconcile. We want them to be able to tell that story, engage in a conversation, and release its hold. Okay, so that's how to join us as a listener. In essence, it's a 2-hour training. 1 hour is archived, 1 is live with Joan and I. We practice our listening skills and then talk about the logistics of the event so you feel ready to go. And then you would volunteer for 1 hour, which means you receive 2 stories. You connect with 2 storytellers. So let's talk about how to be involved as a storyteller. You pick a time slot to join us on February 16th, and you would join us for about 30 minutes. At the top of your 30 minutes, you'll share a 4-minute story of your choice about your experience during or after caregiving. You can be a current family caregiver or a former family caregiver. You can share your story from memory, from notes. You can recite it. You can tell it off the cuff, whatever feels comfortable for you. After you tell that 4-minute story, your listening artist will engage in a conversation with you. He or she will ask you some questions and really just talk it out with you. You'll connect for about 20 minutes with your listening artist. At the end of your time with us, we'll ask you to complete a post-event survey. That will help us know, what do we want to improve? What do we want to add? And again, recording your story is optional. If you'd like, your listening artist can record the story just for your personal use, or can record it for us to actually make public. We have a group on our community called Caring Our Way, called the Encyclopedia Family Caregiving, and we house those stories there. So the goal is that the Caregiving Listener Project becomes a part of communities, neighborhoods, workspaces, community organizations. It would be wonderful if you knew on certain days throughout the year, you could stop in a location in your neighborhood or log on to a Zoom meeting and connect with a listening artist. That's the goal. So we were lucky enough to be featured on the NASDAQ Tower last week. That was very exciting for us. And I think it just really speaks to the power of what it's like to connect with someone who simply wants to be an expert in the art of listening. And that's the listening artist. Okay. We would love for you to help us promote this event. So we have different graphics that you can use. There's a graphic for storytellers, there's one for listening artists, and then there's one that is just general about the project. Okay, so I'll put the link to join our group, the Caregiving Listener Project, in the chat room for those who are joining live, and I'll include it in the show notes for those who are watching the archive. Okay, I just want to make sure I covered everything. What did I miss? What should I add? What do you think, Joan?
I mean, I think you covered all the logistics pretty well. I was not familiar with Zoom rooms the first time we did it, so I was a little leery about how that was going to work. Worked just fine. It was pretty seamless. When you're in the room, you do get a warning, like a little message will come up saying you're almost out of time. I have found, just being a listener, that sometimes you got to be a little bit flexible. Like, someone can get into their story and be at the 4-minute mark, and it's really not a place where you're going to cut them off. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. And when you start discussing it afterwards, same thing, depending on what comes up there, but there's total flexibility there. And it was a fantastic experience. I wouldn't be still involved if I really didn't think it was a very valuable thing. So does anyone have questions, like concerns?
Just want to mention something else that we figured out. And that was, it's really nice as a group, we gather at top of the hour and then at 30 minutes. So storytellers will join at top of the hour and then at 30 minutes. The listening artists will be there for the full hour. It was nice as a group to introduce the storyteller to their listening artist and then to send them on their way together. There was something nice about that. It seems so simple, but it really was quite lovely. And then after the session, the storyteller was able to go on their way, and then the listening artist just did a little bit of a debrief with us, not about the story, but just about the experience, what it was like, what went well, how they felt about it, and then they were ready for the next round. So it helped to have a little bit of meeting time at top of the hour and then at 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny was one of our listening artists for our October event. Jenny, what would you add?
Well, I was going to mirror what Joan was saying. I think as a listener, it was so impactful for me. My listener shared very intimate details, but yet it was so validating for me to hear, because as always, everybody's, as caregivers, our stories are all different, but yet they're all the same. And to be trusted was so special to me. And to have the debriefing afterwards was very helpful as well. I think that's crucial for us to have that time to process together. But I'm here again. I wouldn't, as Joan, I wouldn't be here if I didn't feel like it was extremely impactful. And I'm sharing this with whoever will listen to me, because I think it is such a needed activity, I guess. I don't know what the right word is. I'm sorry, I'm looking through the words. Everybody's story needs to be heard, or they need to be validated. And I've been very fortunate because I've been supported. I found you guys very early in my caregiving career, so I was never felt isolated, but there's so many that do. So yes, I can't recommend it enough. Eventually I hope to have a story and be on the opposite side. That's kind of my goal. Yet it hasn't quite come to that yet. So, but I'm here to listen for sure.
Something too about being a storyteller, I think sometimes people get caught up in, oh my gosh, what's the story? It can be any story.
Right.
You could pick a specific day and tell a story about that day. You could tell a story about diagnosis day. You could tell a story about when your caree started hospice care. You can start a story when you felt like, oh my gosh, it's just me. And that could be at midnight in the emergency room. The thing about a story is that it just has to have a beginning, middle, and end. And what's great about actually putting the story together is you're doing a little bit of work before you meet with us. So you're already starting to release the story because you're starting to actually create context around it. And then you meet us and you, in essence, it's like you leave the story in the Zoom room, the private Zoom room. And then you leave thinking, okay, I figured that out. I feel better. And the other
Yeah.
thing I think is so, oh, sorry, Joan, about the
No, go
debriefing,
ahead.
is that there's never a temptation to disclose any private details about the story that we heard. It's not at all what we are thinking of. Instead, we're thinking about the feelings of the experience and how it felt. Yeah, Joan, go for it.
I was just going to say, listening project sounds pretty nebulous. Like, what is that even? Because we all think, well, I talk, people listen. But it's a very different thing because depending on who you're talking to, they're either kind of doing 5 other things at the same time and not really listening, or like Denise said, they can't handle it, or they might want to like jump right in and try to fix it or make you feel better. And that's not what this is about. One of the reasons it's so special to me is I didn't know anything about Denise's group when I was taking care of my mom. Wish to God I had. And I just remember the story I told was being at the hospital day after day, and it still makes me tear up. Cafeteria worker comes in to deliver the trays. She was the first person who asked how I was doing. Right. So it really underscores as a caregiver how important it is just to have somebody you can talk to, because no one else ever asked. So anyway, that's.
Yeah. Oh, Roxanne, go for it.
Yeah, so this really interests me in a number of ways. Hi, because I've been doing both. I've been on both ends lately. I've been telling my story as a caregiver of my daughter who's been mentally ill for the last 17 years. And I'm now doing a parenting mental health support worker. So what I'm kind of hoping from this is, as a listener, there's always tips and tricks that we can pick up, right? Like things that we need to pick up along the way. So that's what I'm hoping to gain from this, is just how to see a story maybe from a little bit of a different angle, or, listening to the in-between parts of the story that aren't being said, but you're hearing. Yeah.
During the live training, the second part of the art of listening, we do give you questions that you can ask. So we want you to feel equipped to manage however the conversation is going. And we also trust your wisdom to ask a question too, because you'll know that sometimes there's a question that is just screaming inside your head to be asked. We want it to feel like you and the storyteller are engaged in a really impactful conversation, that you're actually taking the time to better understand the storyteller, to really be curious about what their experiences are. And I think when you engage with someone who's curious about your story, you immediately feel accepted. You immediately feel like you belong in a safe space. And that's one of the goals as well. Something else too, I think there are some stories that we feel comfortable bringing to a support group setting, for instance. And then there's some stories where we think, I don't want an audience for this one. I'm just not sure how this is going to sound in front of a group of people. So I just want to tell one person. And that's nice to know that there's one person who will just receive the story.
We all have those stories that would be prefaced with, this is going to make me sound really horrible, but right?
I was just going to say the same thing.
We all have that story.
Exactly.
Or more.
Or more. I think the intimacy of it is what really creates that safety net too, for those with the one-on-one.
Yeah.
It creates that real intimate environment.
And you can be both a storyteller and a listening artist. So we've had some that have done both on the same day, and that's okay with us. Okay, how does this sound to you guys? I'm going to take your silence as consent. This sounds great.
It does
Sounds
sound great.
awesome.
It does. I'm very excited about it.
So let me tell you what next steps are, except, you know what? This is a very unusual situation. We use Mighty Networks for our community carrying our way, and Mighty Networks is down. I've been using Mighty Networks for over 3 years. It has never gone down, and it's been down. So I think some who registered through Mighty Networks might not have been able to get the Zoom link. And there is a link to join us on Mighty Networks in our Caregiving Listener Project group that I would love to share, but I can't get into the community. So I'll just follow up with everybody and make sure that you have the link to join us as a listener or a storyteller, and the link to this archive as well.
Exciting. I'm excited.
I am too. I am too. I'm excited about it as well. And we are so grateful for those who have joined us who are new to the project. We are grateful for your interest. We're grateful for your participation, and we look forward to continuing to listen and converse with you. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Yep. Thank you for everything. I
Thank
look forward
you.
to seeing
Thank
you
Thank
guys
you all.
soon.